Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are here to explore a critical question for UK higher education institutions. Is your student experience an afterthought? This is a question that resonates deeply across UK higher education right now. Universities are under increasing pressure to deliver a student experience that isn't just good, but exceptional. Students today expect seamless, personalized, and digitally enabled interactions. And some recent data, actually, from the 2024 National Student Survey indicates that just over 85% of students responded positively to questions about teaching on my course, which then reflects a generally favorable view of academic instruction. Yet many of the institutions we talk to and work with are still grappling with fragmented systems, disconnected touch points, and lots of legacy processes that make true transformation rather difficult. So the challenges are definitely mounting. Student expectations are evolving rapidly, driven by experiences in lots of other sectors, whether that's banking or retail or entertainment, and regulatory scrutiny around outcomes such as well-being is intensifying. A recent report as well by TASO, indicates that reported mental health challenges among students have tripled since 2018, which equates to approximately 300,000 UK undergraduates facing issues in 2024. And the competition for students, both domestic and international, is fiercer than ever. All of this is happening in a landscape where funding and resource constraints are a constant reality as well. So, where does the student experience sit in your institution's priorities? Is it a core strategic focus shaping every decision across the student life cycle? Or is it something that gets attention when problems arise, but isn't fully embedded in how your university operates? So while efforts to enhance teaching quality are obviously evident, are we equally prioritizing the broader aspects of student experience, factors such as mental health support, financial well-being, and the ethical integration of technology? Because these are all integral to a holistic student experience. That's the discussion we'll be having today. Thanks again for joining us. Throughout this session, we'll explore the realities of student experience across the sector, highlight the common gaps and challenges, and most importantly, examine what's needed to move from an afterthought to a truly student-centered approach. So with that, I'll introduce my colleague, Dave King, and let's get started.
Great, thank you, Richard. So some of you are already going to be on a journey. Some of you are just starting. Others are thinking about it. Whatever stage you're at in considering your future student experience, I hope you'll find something useful to take away from this webinar this morning. In the introduction, Richard talked about the many demands on universities right now, including financial pressures. Now, that's something we will explore more in the next webinar in this series. What I did want to say at this stage is financial pressure is also very much shared by students, with affordability becoming an increasingly important consideration. That can be very easy to focus inwards, and this isn't a unique trait in HE institutions. Many organisations we worked with across every sector over the years often share this challenge. And whilst it may seem like the best approach, focus on what you can see in front of you and solving the day-to-day challenges and pains internally, does mean you often lose sight of why you exist in the first place. And for you and for universities, it's for your students and the overall experience you provide for them. Interestingly, if we look at some of the reports, and Richard's mentioned a few in the introduction, but we look at reports coming out also the likes of JISC, Universities UK, even universities that have published the voice of the student data. There is an interesting split between the human, physical, so the quality of education, inclusiveness, equality, well-being, campus life and experience, and the digital, So how can we provide accessibility from anywhere? How do you make a digital experience interactive and personalized? And this then gets us to the heart and the essence of why students' experience can often get lost. This is the first point we wanted to talk about today. This conflicting demand sometimes between physical and digital delivery, whilst also grappling with fragmented systems which struggle to fully enable and meet either of the demands. Does that sound familiar to you? Now, with this context, it helps us to think about the future of our university. Even today, there is still a traditional view in students' minds. Now, this is very relevant to myself because I've got a daughter going through this experience right now, trying to select which university she goes to. And when I sit with her, from the music she listens to the film she watches, to some of the prospectuses she reads, the traditional view, like this AI image that we're showing now, is what is being portrayed. But you and I, and those on this call, know that this all changed very rapidly during COVID. And suddenly, en masse, almost overnight, your university had to go digital first. It showed what could be possible. Some things have stuck and become new ways of delivering for students. This hybrid learning model is definitely going to be here to stay in the coming years. So what are some of the things that are being discussed now in consideration of a 2030 time horizon? And when we say 2030, it feels like the future, but it is only 5 years away. As already mentioned, the key thing is balancing that intersection of human and digital. This is going to be crucial to hybrid learning. If we get it right and if we do it well, it can also help towards our other key factor we talked about for students earlier, which is affordability. But then the next challenge comes, which is how do we then manage the digital divide? How do we ensure we stay inclusive so we don't deter those who might not have a good access to digital environments? How do we make sure that in that hybrid world, social interaction is still key? And also, how do we make sure we improve the self-discipline of students to work in that hybrid model? The second thing to consider, as we're talking about, is building the foundations that deal with the real here and now challenges, keeping the lights on, heritage technologies, pressure to save cash, whilst also enabling future success. And I'm sure for many of you, there's already some large infrastructure investments on the horizon, if not already underway. And suddenly 5 years does not feel like a long time. Now, what we want to talk about is how design is one way we can look at both these challenges and imagine possible futures. Leveraging service design techniques helps us to put a framework in place where we can capture student pain points and opportunities, understanding the context of supporting capabilities that enable the student experience. This same approach of service design could then be used not just to consider student experience in the full life cycle, but could be used to understand the research journey, even the colleague journey. This begins to build a framework to support decision making in context, test hypotheses of what if scenarios, and without taking long periods of time to do it. Do just enough, answer the next question, make the next decision. It should be living and breathing, developed over time, embedded in everything you do. Now, to get back us on to point. Today is the focus on student. So I want to bring Charlie in. And Charlie, where could a university start in service design? And what ways are there to accelerate?
So, thank you. So where do you start? That is such a good question. Um, What I will do is spend the next few minutes talking through how we started with the student journey. We'll look to unpack that top layer and talk through what we think of as an outside-in view of the student journey, which has helped us to better understand and be able to improve the whole overall student experience. And one which is linked to the standard business and data architecture inside-out views you would typically get with higher education reference models. We'll then touch on the approach we've used to build a common framework for universities and how we use this framework ourselves. So this is our high-level view of the journey for a higher education student. We have 5 stages, which are truly end-to-end, with an outer layer, which you can see that breaks these stages down a bit further to show the student mindset at each point of the journey. And there are more detailed user goals associated with these substages, which we'll touch on a bit later. The overall student journey starts, oddly enough, with the stage that students probably aren't that really aware of, the idea to curriculum. This is all about how universities introduce new programs and modules onto their curriculum, how an idea in a department or faculty develops through the planning, design and accreditation process to make it onto the curriculum and be offered to students in a prospectus. It's also the only time you'll see the word "we" on the outside layer. This is because it's typically outside the view of students. It's something the university does itself internally, although students obviously reap the benefits from improvements to the curriculum and also the quality of the education products they receive. Recruit to enroll covers the marketing, recruitment and admission elements of the student journey, a critical and possibly stressful part of the journey for a lot of students. The outer layer shows I Discover, which can begin as early as the outreach activities that university does, building the awareness of your institution and raising aspirations in the young people who could possibly become your future students. This stage continues through the application process, with applicants then accomplishing any offer conditions and then joining, which covers all the areas of enrolment and onboarding, and also making sure that students' needs and requirements can all be accommodated. This can also be an interesting stage from a data perspective, because it highlights the challenge of what you are calling a student at any particular time and as they move this stage. In this example, they may be moving from a pre-prospect to a prospect to an applicant to a candidate, probably with an offer, and then a pre-enrollment student before they become a student themselves. And all of these roles may need to be identified and treated uniquely and differently as they pass through these states. The Learn to Reward stage covers the typical student educational activities, starting with the student be able to access and engage in I Learn, and being supervised for either coursework, dissertation, or research-based activities, being fairly assessed throughout the course, and then being rewarded for their time and effort with final grades, awards, and graduation. The need to support stage actually stretches across and underpins a lot of the student journey. This is about making sure that all the necessary administration activities are in place, managing the student relationship throughout their journey, maintaining student records, student finance and invoicing, scholarships, student conduct, etc. It also involves ensuring that each student is fully supported and can access the relevant advice they may need when they need it, such as academic advice, health and well-being, disability support, careers advice, etc. It also covers the student handling what they need to be doing themselves to complete all their study activities and requirements, to make sure their own administration of financial affairs are in order before they graduate. And the final stage in our end-to-end journey is belong to engaged. This stage starts almost immediately after coursework finishes, typically with graduation, so that a student who's now an alumni still feels that I belong to the university and is more than happy to receive and respond to ongoing alumni engagement. Possibly over time, giving their time or donating to development and fundraising activities. And also being supportive, which can cover the alumni themselves or the university engaging with donors or sponsors or philanthropists. That's our end-to-end view, showing our outside-in view across the 5 stages. However, for those familiar with the higher education reference models, their DNA can also be seen throughout this diagram. And it's important to have that linkage and also to maintain that linkage, not only as a check and balance to make sure you haven't missed anything, but also to make sure you've covered the right level of detail. But also critically, because it can provide a link to benchmarking activity across other universities and enable any data that you've collected to be understood in context with such industry standard reference models. And once you have such a model, how should you use it? How can you use it to accelerate what you're up to communicate what you're up to? I mean, up till now, we've been talking about this is our view of the student journey. Ideally, you should be looking to build your own view, to build a student journey that works for you, to build a framework that your students find real, one that reflects their experiences. And also, importantly, one that is recognizable in your own organization, one that your own people can see where they fit in and how they ultimately contribute to support the student journey. I don't want to spend a lot of time on our approach, but in essence, in Discovery, what we've found, it's very rare we would go into university and have to start from a blank piece of paper. Whether we're covering the student journey from end to end, or maybe deep diving and focusing into just one stage, there is typically existing documentation we can use. And this is what you want, because immediately it reflects existing thinking and uses organizational terminology and language. It may need consolidating, it may need tidying up. It's also useful to have a cross-check against a standard reference model such as HERM. But that always helps and allows us to build that initial view, that initial draft, to build it out with enriching commentary, capturing and focusing on the student view of the world and building out the student story. You'd obviously look to qualify any initial draft of the student journey with key stakeholders. Although if you get discovery right, you should hopefully be playing back and embellishing a recognizable view of the student journey. It shouldn't be a surprise to people you share it with. You can then refine the emerging and tailored framework in workshops or work sessions to further validate the content and capture additional information, which I'll touch on a bit in the next slide. And then obviously playback is all about completing and sharing what you've done, either across this student journey or in the deep dive focus areas. And this is our draft framework, which is just another view really on the earlier schematic, although includes the more detailed user goals I mentioned earlier. It is a starter for 10, which gives an additional level of granularity to the student journey and the student's story. However, as with all frameworks, it is just a framework. and will only be as good as what you hang off it. So what can you use it for? What do we use it for? We use it to build out student activities, the interactions that they have, capture their goals, capture the student's state at any point in the journey, and also to capture their experiences. We use it to capture the challenges or pain points a student may face on their journey. And we can use it as a storyboard for identifying and capturing improvement areas and the high-level requirements that will help to improve the student journey. It can be a common communications tool, demonstrating where you are investing in the journey and how you are transforming the student journey to make it better. And that's just not about technology solutions. It can be and should be used to show where you're making process enhancements, maybe comms improvements or organizational changes. Such a framework can be used to show the scope and impact of such changes. So what are our takeaways? Firstly, that reference models are invaluable. They can be a critical check and balance. Although they are not always the complete answer, you should build that outside in view as well. You should build a student journey that works for you, a framework that your students find real, and one that is recognizable and usable across the whole organization. And once you have your framework, use it, share it, evolve it, and then use it over and over again. Make it real and keep it alive. And hopefully this will help you to create that student experience that truly delivers. Thank you for listening. And Rich, how would you go about aligning the student experience with what a university might be getting up to with their digital transformation?
Thanks, Charlie. Right, so when we do work with a lot of UK universities, one of the biggest challenges we often see is making sure that the digital and technology investments are truly driven by the student experience rather than just being another IT project. So all too often decisions are made based on the latest product or platform without first asking what do we at the highest level want to do to improve the student experience. So the first point for us really is to make sure that we start with the student experience and not with the tech. So before making any digital investment, we need to be crystal clear on what student experience outcomes we're aiming for. So are we trying to make academic support more accessible? Are we looking to create a more engaging virtual learning environment, remove friction from admin processes? By defining these outcomes up front ensures that the technology decisions are actually then solving the right problems. So the approach to digital transformation needs to be people-centric. And by people-centric, we mean student-centric from the get-go. The key thing to note here is that this will require you actively engaging students as key stakeholders in the planning and implementation of digital initiatives. Deliver what the people want is usually a good strategy. Once we've effectively then started with that student experience, the next stage is to tie the digital investments back to real impact. So once we know the outcomes we're after, the next step is mapping them to digital and technology investments in a way that makes sense to you. So we've worked with a number of UK higher education institutions over the years. They will use different methodologies, different tools, but in essence, it's all about making sure that we are mapping the digital investments to the actual outcomes, the student experience outcomes. So this ensures that the technology isn't just being added for the sake of it, but it is directly improving the student experience. So, for example, if we know students struggle to find the right support services, investing in an AI-powered digital assistant, for example, or streamlining a self-service portal could make a real difference. Equally, we should be linking the digital initiatives back to the institutional strategy goals as well. So this further ensures that you as digital leaders are delivering transformation efforts that directly impact the highest level outcomes that your institution cares about. And as I've already mentioned, it's about delivering what the people want. So keeping both students and certainly the senior board level members of the institution happy. But how do we know if it's working? And it is definitely not just enough to implement new systems or tools or applications. We have to measure whether they're actually making an impact. Metrics like student satisfaction scores, engagement analytics, academic performance data can help show whether these investments are delivering on their promise. And according to JISC, universities should go beyond just looking at attendance and retention figures, and instead start to focus on how digital learning is improving overall student outcomes. A priority then needs to be an adoption of uniform data practices across your institution, because it is the data that will be essential for informed decision making. If you think about getting to that robust and trustworthy data set, you can then start to look to leverage data analytics tools to assess how effective digital initiatives have been and start to leverage this intelligence to fine-tune strategies, redirect investments, making sure that you're getting to the best student experience outcomes possible. And lastly, one of the most important questions is, again, going back to why are we doing this in the first place? And this needs to be asked throughout the life cycle of any project. Why are we actually doing this again? So if the answer at any stage turns to be more about upgrading a system than improving student experience, then it's time to rethink. And this is particularly where that student-centered digital roadmap helps. It helps keep the investments focused on delivering real value and not just, hopefully, ticking off IT projects. A lot of the universities, again, that we've worked with in the past couple of years are very much still bogged down with foundational technology work. So be that upgrading networks or sorting out legacy systems, trying to sunset legacy applications or getting basic integrations in place. And while these things are important, they should absolutely not be where the story ends. The real goal is to move beyond this stage and focus on initiatives that effectively delight and excite students. So we're talking about things like personalized digital experiences, next generation learning spaces, and I think the big one that's coming is AI-driven academic support. And these, for us, are the kinds of things that will define the future of student experience. So if universities want to make real progress, they need to stop treating the student experience as an afterthought and start making it the driver of digital change. The key is to stay focused on why the technology is being introduced and make sure every investment is tied to real student outcomes and put in place the right measures to track success. And only then can we move past just keeping the lights on and start delivering digital experiences that truly transform student life.